In 1971, Ted Bessell played a doctor who missed the signs of an aortic aneurysm. 25 years later, the same deadly condition killed him in real life. Now his family is breaking their silence about the chilling coincidence that haunted Ted's final days. Ted Bessell was born in Flushing, Queens, in 1935, into a home that practically breathed music. His father was a composer and arranger working in the New York music scene, and his mother had escaped political unrest in Russia and brought with her the skills of a concert pianist. Ted grew up watching his mother practice for hours. Before he could even read music, he was mimicking her hands on the piano. By the time he was 5, he was already trying to play complicated pieces by ear. When the family moved to Manhasset, Ted's musical training got even more serious. His mother guided him closely, and he practiced obsessively. The hard work paid off. At just 12 years old, he stood on the stage at Carnegie Hall and performed a solo piano recital, a dream many never reach. He played pieces by Chopin, Bach, and Debussy, and stunned the audience with both skill and emotion. A New York Times critic praised him for his precision and depth, and even Vladimir Horowitz, one of the greatest pianists in the world, congratulated him after the show. It seemed like Ted was on his way to becoming a world-class musician, but something inside him was still searching. That's when his story takes a turn. At Manhasset High School, Ted became friends with someone completely different from him, Jim Brown. Jim would go on to become a football legend and actor, but in high school, he was just another kid trying to make his mark. Ted and Jim played on the lacrosse team together. One was a piano prodigy, the other a sports powerhouse, yet they clicked. Ted, it turned out, was surprisingly athletic, and Jim had a quiet love for the arts. They went to each other's events, Jim at Ted's recitals, Ted cheering at Jim's games. For two young men on such different paths, they had a friendship that crossed boundaries, both social and racial, at a time when that wasn't common. And even after high school, their lives would cross again, this time in Hollywood. But before acting ever entered the picture, Ted had other plans. Around the age of 16, he went through a deep religious phase. He felt pulled toward the Catholic Church and began volunteering regularly at his local parish. He served as an altar boy, helped out with church programs, and even applied to a seminary. He was accepted to Georgetown University with the idea that he might become a priest. It wasn't a passing thought. It was something he seriously considered for almost 2 years. His father's declining health during this time may have deepened his need for something meaningful, something spiritual. Yet, while at Georgetown, something shifted. The arts started calling him back. He transferred to the University of Colorado in 1955 to study drama full-time. There, he met Dr. Richard Burns, and more importantly, he took a class with visiting professor Alvina Krauss. She had a reputation for breaking actors open and rebuilding them from the inside out. During a performance of Summer and Smoke in 1957, something clicked. Bessell realized he didn't want to be behind a piano anymore. Acting let him feel more alive, more expressive. He let go of his dream of becoming a concert pianist and stepped fully into a new one. A year later, he packed his bags for New York City and joined the Neighborhood Playhouse, one of the best acting schools in the country. There he trained under Sanford Meisner, a legend in the acting world. Meisner didn't care for overthinking. He taught actors to live truthfully in imaginary situations, to respond with real emotion instead of memorized lines. Bessell dove into Meisner's intense repetition exercises, stripping away any performance tricks and learning how to be fully present in the moment. By his second year, he was handpicked for the master class. Just 15 students, all receiving direct guidance from Meisner himself. It was tough. The schedule ran 6 days a week from morning to evening, with extra rehearsals at night. But Bessell thrived under the pressure. Meisner once said Bessell had a rare gift. He could shut off his brain and truly listen. During this time, Bessell added something unusual to his training: dance. But not just any dance. He trained with Martha Graham, a groundbreaking force in the modern movement, and her longtime collaborator, Louis Horst. Graham's style was all about emotion in motion, using the body to speak what words couldn't. Bessell spent 3 days a week in her studio, sweating through hours of demanding physical work. He learned how to communicate with just a shift in posture, a slight movement, and breath. Horst taught him how to feel rhythm in his body, which later gave his comedy a musical precision. Graham herself once told him, "Your body speaks the truth, even when your voice is silent." He never forgot that. By 1960, Bessell was shaping into a fully formed actor. But he wasn't done yet. He joined a workshop at the American Place Theater, run by Win Handman. Handman had his own method, rooted in Meisner, but focused on helping actors make bold, personal choices. In those small, twice-weekly sessions, Bessell found his voice in comedy. Handman challenged him with strange drills, like staying in character while getting interrupted non-stop. It was during a scene from Come Blow Your Horn that Bessell had a breakthrough. He realized that comedy didn't always have to be loud. Sometimes it was funnier when played soft, with timing and restraint. That moment shaped the way he would act for the rest of his career. Other actors in the group took notice. Dustin Hoffman, who was also in the workshop, once said Bessell had the most precise comic timing he'd ever seen. Ted Bessell didn't start out in the spotlight. In the late 1950s, he was just another young guy trying to break into show business. He worked as a page at ABC in New York, dressed in a blue uniform, guiding audience members to their seats and standing for hours on end. The job paid only $52 a week, barely enough to cover rent in the Bronx, but it gave him a front-row seat to the world he dreamed of joining. He'd see stars like Cary Grant and Marilyn Monroe walk by, and though the money was tight, he soaked up every bit of knowledge he could. He picked up extra shifts when he could, especially when big shows were being taped. Some days, he'd audition in the morning, change clothes in a subway bathroom, and then dash off to work another 12-hour shift. It was exhausting, but he never complained. This was his training ground. One of his first brushes with television came on Who Do You Trust?, hosted by Johnny Carson. Bessell didn't just appear on the show. He caught Carson's eye. The two struck up an unexpected friendship. Carson saw something in the young actor and started inviting him to rehearsals. During breaks, he'd pull Bessell aside and offer tips. Sometimes they'd hang out late into the night at Toots Shores, bouncing around comedy ideas with Carson's writers. These moments were never part of any official mentorship program, but they helped shape Bessell's sense of timing and delivery. Later, when Bessell found fame on That Girl, Carson brought him back as a guest multiple times, not just to talk about his sitcom, but to highlight his deeper talents, like music and theater. Even before he found his way into TV, Bessell was building a solid foundation on stage. He joined the Blackfriars Guild and took on roles that tested him in every way. One standout was The Power of Darkness, where he played a troubled young man and earned glowing reviews. That role opened doors, and soon he was co-producing a bold play called Crimes of Passion with his brother Frank. The show was edgy, full of dark humor and sexual tension, and it didn't sit well with everyone. Religious groups tried to shut it down, but Bessell held his ground, defending the play's right to be seen. Critics called it brilliant. The show ran for 118 performances and gave Bessell his first taste of real respect. not just as an actor, but as someone who could fight for what he believed in. That confidence followed him to the West Coast. In 1962, he was cast in Look Homeward, Angel, playing the emotionally raw lead role of Eugene Gant. The show took place in Los Angeles, and it changed everything. Critics were impressed by his depth and vulnerability. Talent scouts from Universal Studios sat in the audience, and soon after, Bessell got small roles in movies like The Outsider with Tony Curtis and Lover Come Back with Rock Hudson and Doris Day. His scenes were short, some were even cut, but the spark was there. Directors noticed his presence, even when he shared the screen with big names. Hollywood started to pay attention. That same year, Bessell landed his first big television role on It's a Man's World. He played Tom DeWitt, a rich kid trying to find himself in a small town. The show was smart and different, focusing on young men living on a houseboat and trying to make sense of life. Viewers loved it, but ratings didn't reflect that love. NBC canceled the show after just 19 episodes. The backlash was loud. Fans wrote tens of thousands of letters. Bessell and his co-star even drove across the country in a Jeep to promote it, until the Jeep broke down. It didn't matter. The show was over, but Bessell had made his mark. What most people didn't see was what he was doing behind the scenes. During the same year, he worked as an assistant director on Checkmate, a detective show. He wasn't credited, but when the episode director got sick, Bessell stepped in and finished an important scene. He was watching how the whole machine worked. Camera angles, lighting, pacing. It wasn't glamorous, but it gave him skills he'd use much later when he moved into directing full-time. At the time, his managers weren't thrilled. They thought he should stick to acting. But Bessell had bigger ideas. He wanted to understand everything. Then came Gomer Pyle, USMC, and the character of Frankie Lombardi. Originally meant for just one episode, Bessell's chemistry with Jim Nabors changed that. Viewers loved the dynamic. But behind the scenes, not everyone was happy. Frank Sutton, who played Sergeant Carter, didn't like sharing screen time. Things got tense. At one point, Sutton refused to shoot scenes with Bessell, and Bessell's character disappeared from the show soon after. Officially, it was called a scheduling conflict. Unofficially, it was clear there had been friction. Still, the role had shown off Bessell's comedic chops, and as one door closed, another opened. In 1966, the search for the right actor to play Donald Hollinger on ABC's new sitcom That Girl was a serious challenge. Marlo Thomas, who played the lead role of Anne-Marie, remembered it well. She said they tested almost every young actor in town. Big names like Charles Grodin and Bill Bixby were among them. But this wasn't just a round of quick auditions. These were tough screen tests. Everyone knew the role had to be perfect, not just for the story, but because the whole concept of the show was risky. Back then, TV executives were nervous about having a show centered on an independent woman. They thought audiences wouldn't like it, so the pressure was on to find a man who wouldn't overshadow Anne, but would still hold his own. When Ted Bessell walked into the room, he didn't have the buzz some of the others did. In fact, early audience tests didn't even rate him that well. But Marlo Thomas saw something others didn't. She felt a spark. And once they read scenes together, everything changed. There was something different about the way they connected. Producers could see it too. Thomas later said, "That was it. No contest." Their chemistry felt natural, real, and fun. Both of them had trained under the same acting coach, Sandy Meisner. That gave them a shared rhythm. They just got each other. Bessell had this funny, slightly odd charm that made him stand out. He wasn't trying too hard. He didn't have to. Their scenes didn't feel like acting. They felt like two people who were just meant to be in the same room. That connection shaped the whole show. Donald Hollinger didn't act like the usual TV boyfriend. He wasn't trying to take control. He wasn't telling Anne what she could or couldn't do. He actually liked that she had big dreams and didn't want to settle down right away. That was rare at the time. Most shows had women chasing marriage, but not this one. Donald stood by Anne while she chased an acting career. He gave her space, not orders. And in doing that, he became something new on television. A boyfriend who didn't have to be the boss to be strong. At a time when the world was changing fast, with protests, revolutions, and all kinds of upheaval, this quiet, respectful kind of man hit a nerve. People noticed. Ted Bessell's popularity grew fast. He became one of the top-rated male leads in public opinion polls. That was a big deal, especially since the show was breaking new ground with its story and characters. Some viewers might have tuned in because of the familiar, steady presence Donald offered. Others loved how he respected Anne's freedom. Together, they made the show work. Their romance felt believable, warm, and honest. The show ran for 5 seasons. Even after it ended, fans kept talking about Don and Anne. They wrote letters. They remembered the way those two made love and respect feel equal. Ted Bessell's performance helped change what people expected from a male character on TV. Ted Bessell once said, "Donald Hollinger made me a name, but took away the heart of me." It wasn't just a dramatic line, it was the truth. Playing Donald on That Girl made him famous, but it also boxed him in. He couldn't shake the image of the sweet, supportive boyfriend, no matter how hard he tried. After 5 seasons on the show, it became nearly impossible for people to see him as anything else. Even when he landed the lead role in a new series, Me and the Chimp, viewers still saw Donald Hollinger. The fame was real, but so was the frustration. What made it worse was that Ted didn't just want to act, he wanted to create. He had studied acting and directing at Georgetown University. He wasn't chasing money or celebrity. He wanted meaning in his work, something that let him shape a story, not just speak someone else's lines. In a 1970 interview, he said, "A performer reading somebody else's words. In the final analysis, he is not a creator." That was the part that haunted him. The world saw him as successful, but inside, he felt stuck. Even though the show was popular, even though the paycheck was good, he felt like something vital was missing. And yet, Ted didn't just walk away. He tried to find space to grow within the limits of the show. In the final seasons, he began directing episodes, looking for some outlet that felt more personal, more his. It wasn't enough to be in front of the camera anymore. He needed to shape the work behind it. He started writing scripts. He explored producing. He was searching, always, for something that felt more real, more creative, more his. There's something bittersweet about all this. While Marlo Thomas had creative control as executive producer, Ted remained within the lines drawn for him. Still, he kept pushing. He loved That Girl, he never said otherwise. But loving the show didn't mean he loved the cage it had become. When the series ended in 1971, Ted didn't try to jump into another sitcom role. He leaned into directing and producing, hoping that stepping behind the camera would finally give him the freedom he'd always wanted. In early 1972, CBS launched a sitcom called Me and the Chimp. It was created by Gary Marshall and Thomas L. Miller, both of whom would later go on to great success with shows like Happy Days. But this time, things didn't click. The idea was simple, maybe too simple. Bessell played a dentist whose family adopts a chimp named Buttons, a failed astronaut from the space program. That was it. The jokes were light, the storylines were thin, and the characters barely had any depth. critics didn't hold back. They called it silly, flat, and pointless. Audiences didn't stick around either. Just 13 episodes aired before CBS pulled the plug in April of that year, replacing it with shows that would become TV classics like MASH and The Bob Newhart Show. Looking back, Me and the Chimp is often listed among the worst shows ever made. One critic summed it up by saying, "The whole show depended on watching a chimp move papers around." That's how low the bar was. And the human characters? Barely written. Nothing stood out. Nobody cared. But the behind-the-scenes story was just as messy. At first, Bessell didn't even want to do the show. When he heard the concept, he reportedly said, "It's crazy. I'm not going to do a show with a monkey." It took some convincing from his manager to get him on board. Once he agreed, though, he immediately pushed for a change in the title. The original name was The Chimp and I. Bessell hated it. He insisted it be switched to Me and the Chimp, even though it wasn't grammatically correct. Why? He wanted his character to come first. He wanted to be seen as the star. That might sound like a small thing, but it revealed something deeper. He was worried about how the show would shape his image after that girl. Things only got worse during filming. According to one of his co-stars, working with the Chimp wasn't as hard as working with Bessell. She even said it felt like he was having a nervous breakdown. Bessell denied that, though he did admit he wasn't in great shape at the time. It was clear the pressure was getting to him. After the show flopped, Bessell had to regroup. Instead of chasing another sitcom right away, he took a different path. He turned to TV movies. Just before Me and the Chimp, he had done one called Two on a Bench, playing a straight-laced stockbroker caught up in a spy plot. Then, in 1972, he starred in Your Money or Your Wife, a mystery that was well-received and even won a Peabody Award. That was a big deal. It showed he could do more than light comedy. He kept this up throughout the 70s, picking roles in various TV films. Some were dramas, some were comedies, but they helped keep his career alive during a rough patch. Still, he didn't give up on sitcoms completely. In 1975, he appeared briefly on The Mary Tyler Moore Show as Mary's boyfriend, but it wasn't until 1980 that he landed another starring role in a sitcom. This one was called Good Time Harry. Unfortunately, it flopped too. Viewers didn't connect with it, and it disappeared quickly. His final main role as an actor came in 1985 in a show called Hail to the Chief. He played the husband of a fictional female president, played by Patty Duke. It was an interesting idea, but once again, the show didn't last. After that, Bessell began to realize that maybe his future wasn't in front of the camera. So, he switched gears. He started directing, and this time, things began to click. He directed episodes of The Tracy Ullman Show. It was one of the first original shows on the brand new Fox network, and it quickly became a hit. The show blended sketch comedy with music, dancing, and even animated shorts that introduced a little cartoon family called The Simpsons. The format was wild, fast-paced, and constantly changing, like filming 3 pilots a week, according to its creator, James L. Brooks. Bessell's direction held it all together. His talent behind the camera was finally getting noticed, and in 1989, he won an Emmy Award as one of the producers. After years of being known mostly for acting, this was the turning point that finally showed Hollywood what else he could do. Not long after, Bessell teamed up with an old friend, Penny Marshall. Their partnership lasted 5 years and made a big impact. They had known each other before they ever worked together, and Marshall often said Bessell had a gift for helping other creative people shine. In 1992, Bessell bought the rights to Bewitched, the classic TV show about a witch trying to live a normal life. He planned to turn it into a movie, and Marshall quickly joined as producer. They worked closely with screenwriter Monica Johnson, imagining a story that would go back to the beginning, showing how Samantha and Darren met and fell in love in New York City. Even as different writers came and went, including big names like Richard Curtis and Douglas Carter Beane, the core idea stayed the same. Bessell and Marshall also worked together on television. He directed episodes of A League of Their Own, a sitcom based on her hit movie. By this time, their creative bond was strong, and their slate was full of projects. When Bessell died suddenly in 1996, Marshall was heartbroken. She lost a close friend and a trusted collaborator. During the early 1990s, Bessell kept building his directing career. After the success of The Tracy Ullman Show, he took on Sibs, a sitcom about three sisters. The show aired for one season, and Bessell directed nearly every episode. It was clear the industry trusted him more and more behind the camera. He didn't stop there. In 1993, he directed more episodes of A League of Their Own, working alongside other well-known names like Tom Hanks and Penny Marshall. 2 years later, he was directing episodes of The Naked Truth, adding yet another show to his growing list. What made this part of his life so powerful was how different it was from his earlier career. Back in the 1960s, he had been the charming male lead in That Girl. But after that series ended, acting roles became harder to find. Directing gave him a second chance, and he took full advantage of it. By the mid-1990s, Bessell's biggest dream project was Bewitched. He had been working on it for years, carefully shaping the story and preparing to direct. He wanted to make a faithful prequel, something that would honor the original show while giving fans a deeper look at how it all began. But on October 5, 1996, just as the project was getting close to production, Bessell died from a heart attack. He was rushed to UCLA Medical Center in Los Angeles after suffering chest pains, but doctors couldn't save him. He died shortly after 1 a.m. from a ruptured aortic aneurysm. It was a quiet killer, something that often gives little warning before it becomes deadly. Only days before, Bessell had told his longtime friend Marlo Thomas that he'd been feeling chest pain. She told him to see a doctor, but by then, the damage may have already been done. At the time, Bessell was entering a new chapter in his career. He had moved behind the camera and was working on directing a film version of Bewitched for Penny Marshall. It was an exciting project, and his sudden death left many in Hollywood shocked and heartbroken. But what makes the story even stranger is something that happened decades earlier. Back in 1971, Bessell appeared in a television episode where he played a doctor. In that role, his character made a mistake. He misdiagnosed a patient who had an aortic aneurysm. It was the same condition that would take Bessell's life many years later. At the time, no one could have imagined the eerie connection between that fictional moment and his real-life death. Doctors say aortic aneurysms are hard to spot. The symptoms often look like something less serious, and by the time the artery bursts, there's little time to act. Bessell's own complaints of chest pain in the days before he died now seem like a warning that went unrecognized. It's chilling to think that the same condition he once portrayed on screen would come back to claim his life, and that both situations ended the same way. As if all that wasn't strange enough, even Bessell's age at the time of his death is surrounded by confusion. Some reports said he was 57, while others claimed he was 61. That 4-year difference might not seem like much, but it left many people wondering what was true. His official biographies list one age, while newspapers like the New York Times listed another. No one ever settled the question for sure. There are theories. Some say it was just a clerical error, repeated again and again by different outlets. Others think it might have been intentional. In Hollywood, changing your age to land a role or seem more marketable wasn't uncommon. Maybe Bessell had done that early on, and the truth got lost along the way.